Hello boxing fans, and welcome to another edition of EBN's predictions. And right now we're talking Tony Bellew versus Danny Mcintosh, British light heavyweight title. And you see, this is a good fight. It's billed as the return of the bomber, but really there are two punchers in this fight. You see, Tony Bellew, he can punch. He's got a rep from the amateur game at heavyweight for knocking people's spark out. And Danny Mcintosh, he can hit too. Don't underestimate Danny. You know, most of his punch wins were in the early days of his career, very early, like the first few. Since then, he's pretty much stopped his opponents or been stopped by his opponents in return, which makes me think this could be an all-action fight. You see, both guys can fight on the front foot and they can bang on the front foot, and both guys can fight on the back foot and they can bang on the back foot, which means to me, someone's going to hit the floor at some point, you know. So okay, right now I'm going to say what both fighters do well and what they both don't do well. So looking at Danny Mcintosh, first of all, he's a good actual boxer and he can bang, like I said. He seems to be good at the British level, but moving on from British level, he seems to be a bit flawed. You see, he's got a good double jab and he can mix it up and he can go back to his fluid style of boxing. However, he does have a somewhat loose defence. In fact, it's just as loose as a porn star's vagina. He tries to rely too much on his natural head movement and natural reflexes to get him in and out of trouble. However, he's not a Roy Jones Jr. type fighter in terms of he's not super fast and has super fast reflexes, and he doesn't hold his hands up high. So it doesn't always seem to work, hence he has 2 KO losses on his career, one to Nathan Cleverly, who also beat Tony Bellew, but the other one was against another European boxer, and this guy caught him with a hand and put him out. Well, put him down, he got up, bad stoppage, but it did end the fight. Another thing that you might want to take into account is if this guy's got reflexes that are not up to the sharpness that they should be if he's trying to use this defence, and then you're working with a guy with a powerful right hand like Tony Bellew, he's going to get a lot of opportunities to land that shot. And if he does, how is Danny Mcintosh going to cope with that kind of pressure, you know, that kind of shot? Because if you look at people like Nathan Cleverly, who basically, he's not a power puncher at all, and he stopped and dropped many times Danny Mcintosh. Then someone like Tony Bellew, who could have put Nathan Cleverly on his arse a few times, you know, maybe that's going to be a big talking issue in how does he get past that right hand, how does he stop it from landing. Something else I picked up on is that Tony Bellew dwarfed, and I mean totally dwarfed, Nathan Cleverly when they were fighting in their fight. He was just totally bigger, you could just tell. You know, he must have rehydrated quite a lot in that fight. But when I look at Nathan Cleverly versus Danny Mcintosh, it was actually Danny Mcintosh who was the smaller of these two as well. So Danny Mcintosh is going to be totally dwarfed by Tony Bellew, which is going to be another big talking point in this fight, if you ask me. Especially if they're both trying to stand toe to toe and land punches. Now moving on to Tony Bellew, and looking at Bellew, he has fought and hung at a much higher level than Danny Mcintosh can dream of fighting at right now. You see, taking away both of their power from their games, Tony Bellew's got the much better boxing skills, and at times against Nathan Cleverly, who holds a world title, so must be at least decent, right? He was, you know, holding his own, and he's shown that he is levels above, you know, domestically, the rest of the game. Another thing to bring up would be that Tony Bellew's got a much better adaptability than Danny Mcintosh. He was able to switch from different circumstances, from boxing to fighting with Nathan Cleverly when it suited him, and vice versa. That's a very big thing that's going to happen in this fight, because at times both of these guys won't want to stand and slug it out with each other, and at times one of them will want to, you know, try and slug it out with the other. So the fact that Tony Bellew can adapt better to both games means that I probably think he's going to be the winner in this fight. It really depends how Danny Mcintosh goes about this fight for me. If he tries to fight Bellew hand to hand, foot for foot, and, you know, take him into the trenches, that possibly is not going to be the best game plan that I could give him. If he tries to work Bellew over the distance and draw mistakes and counter those mistakes, then that would be a much better game plan, and therefore would have a much better chance of victory. However, I'm not sure Danny Mcintosh is that good to come up with and stick to that type of a game plan. You see, I'm going to tell you right now, I expect that Tony Bellew to win this fight by knockout. You know, I just think Mcintosh is not as good as Bellew, and I think that Bellew is better in all aspects than Mcintosh. Mcintosh can come again, don't get me wrong, and I'll get into that in the post-fight video. And I think Bellew is better than this level, especially domestic level. I think that really he needs to push on to European level. I'd love to see him fight for the European title, and then, you know, if it's meant to be that he's going to go on to world things, then that's where he's going to go. So once again, thanks. I just want to tell you to look in the description and like the Facebook page. If get involved with the free links and the boxing talk that's available there, and also get involved with the Twitter page. And don't be a stranger, because I don't bite.